Welcome to the Drawbore podcast. I'm your host, Brian Perry, a timber framer and licensed professional engineer. In this podcast, we will travel through the world in timber framing through conversations with timber framers, architects, engineers, and many other folks in the industry on their unique perspective in how shaping timbers has shaped their lives. Through these conversations, our hope is for folks of all interests, whether new to the craft in timber construction, designing, and engineering, or looking to build a home or other structure, or those who have been building timber frames their whole lives to gain new insights and perspectives through these conversations. Now, what's with the name Drawbore? What is a drawbore? Why is it used and what is it good for? That's a good question, young tenants, and follow along. You'll be sure to see. In short, it is a simple method offsetting peg holes within a timber connection to pull the connection or joint tighter. But this is our goal: stronger connections through conversations. This is the Drawbore podcast, and I'm excited to have you along. So if you're watching these episodes, you're probably wondering how people got this information. How do you learn how to timber frame? Well, there's a couple options that you can go through. You can learn through the Timber Framers Guild. They have all sorts of conferences and community build projects that you can get your hands on and learn the traditional techniques. Some timber framers also will put on workshops as well, where you can go and learn the traditional techniques through the timber framer, specifically on a project and building the community that way through knowledge and building of a structure there. There's also some other formal schools that you could go to and workshops. One of them, the Heartwood School. They've been around for a long time and also a part of the Timber Framers Guild as well. So if you want to learn a lot of information, go to the Heartwood School. There's also the American College of the Building Arts. And today we're featuring another school that has another background or insight into the timber framing world. And it's a trade school called the College of St. Joseph the Worker. So joining me in today's episode is Adam Robezzoli, who's the lead timber framing instructor over there. And he's going to go through what they have in their curriculum and what they teach and how they're a little bit different than some other options that you might look at. So if you're looking at getting into the building trade and in timber frame specifically, or other building trades, College of St. Joseph the Worker is one trade school that you could potentially go to among dozens of others. So we're looking forward to chatting with Adam and all the information that he has to share. So with me, how do you pronounce your last name? Adam?
Robezzoli.
Robezzoli. So with the College of St. Joseph the Worker. And so I first heard about you. You're on Pints, or I guess the sponsor of Pints with Aquinas.
Mm-hmm.
So first heard about you, or at least the college in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But tell me a little bit more about yourself. How did you get into timber framing and College of St. Joseph the Worker?
Yeah, so it's kind of the same story, how I got into timber framing and how I got into here. So I mean, I didn't grow up doing this. I've only been doing this for about 4 or 5 years. And before this, before living in Steubenville and doing timber framing, I was out in Los Angeles, working in video games and animation, and technology, the complete opposite of this. So I joke around with some of the people here that I used to work with pixels. Now I work with sawdust. And I mean, I think like a lot of people, my life changed a lot during COVID. So, my wife and I met here in Steubenville. We both went to Franciscan and graduated from Franciscan University of Steubenville back 20 some years ago. And, but during COVID, just got a lot more serious about our faith, got back to our faith in a big way. And part of that was me getting more serious about fatherhood. And I have 4 sons. At the time, I had 3 sons. And I was, my oldest son was junior high age, and I had been, we were already homeschooling him, and I was taking him into the video game studio with me and teaching him how to make video games. But it got to a point where I realized that part of my duty as a father was not just to provide financially and be a spiritual leader, but I really needed to pass on something he could do to provide for himself and something he could do that had dignity, something ideally that we as a family could do together. Yeah, I was reading like Jason Craig's Leaving Boyhood Behind at the time, and I read this book, Durable Trades by Rory Grove. There were a lot of books coming out this time that want like people trying to solve this problem. Like, what do we do about how do we raise our sons well? How do we set up some kind of multi-generational family business, which is just what all businesses used to be, right?
Mhm.
But how do we get back to that? Because there's a lot of good things in that we've lost. Um, but I'd never even heard of timber framing. I didn't work in construction. Uh, I helped my dad like make a deck in high school. That was about the extent of my experience. And but I just knew I needed to do this, and I just really felt like video games were not the thing that I was going to pass on. So as I'm Catholic. I'm here at this Catholic university. I was just praying every single day to Saint Joseph to like teach me something, make something happen, make an opportunity happen. I need to learn something that I could do to pass on to my sons. I mean, I'm almost 40 at the time, so I knew it was kind of ridiculous, but I like, what else am I going to do? Um, and after months and months of praying and my wife offering like all of our masses for the same intention, I ended up meeting a timber framer through my dad. And through that, learning what timber framing was, and then signing up for the Heartwood, the Timber Framing Guild School, their big intensive, which was already totally packed. Like they didn't have any room for me. But then like all the doors started opening. A spot opened up. They said I had to let them know in 24 hours. I was able to stay with a friend who had a Catholic priest who had like a religious community out by Heartwood. He let me like stay with them for free. I like got an awesome truck like with a great deal, so like I could end up driving from Pennsylvania to Massachusetts each week. So like everything just fell into place. I took that class, which was excellent. It was really great. Jack Sobin was teaching it, and a bunch of other great timber framers.
Nice.
And met some awesome other students who are now timber framing also, and we kind of keep track of each other. Um, uh, and I was still at the school, and I was getting calls from Jacob Imam, who's our president, of like, "Hey, come down here and build me a timber frame house." Like, I mean, you know how ridiculous that is. And I'm like, I started learning 3 weeks ago, and he's like, "No, no, no, it'd be great." And but at the same time, I'm like, well, I'm in this class, and I do need to like, the goal is provide for my family with this. I didn't build him a house, that fell through. But he hired me to build these shelves that are behind me here. That was like my first paid gig, was building these for the college.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so that's how it got started. And then they gave me projects to learn. I ended up meeting Jordan Finch, timber framer down in Virginia, who mentored me, answered all my questions, pointed out the stuff that I was doing that was a bad idea that I should probably stop doing, and I followed his advice. Yeah, and then now here I am.
So was the College of St. Joseph the work? Was that even on your radar really, or that was just like how did you get linked up
Yeah.
with them if you went to Heartwood and
Yeah, so it was on my radar. So there's a think tank here in Steubenville, Ohio, called New Polity. It's a Catholic think tank, and their whole thing is like liberalism has failed. The thing that like has kept up the West afloat for however many 100 years is falling apart. Like, what do we do next? Like, how do we be good Catholics as this system's falling apart? I mean, I'm probably doing this like they would probably hate that that's how I described it. But at least that's how I understood it at the time. They've gone on to more interesting. They're continuing these ideas in other ways. But that was, at least when I got interested in them, that's a lot of what they were talking about. How should we use our? They did a whole series on money. How should we use our money? What are the Catholic vices associated with money? What are the virtues? Like, how do we live well with that? How do we live well like politically? And so part of that is. And so they would do conferences here every summer, and I came to those conferences. So the people who started the college also ran that think tank, and so the college is like a fruit of that. They were kind of like, theoretically, how should we live well together? And part of that answer is, well, it's going to look different in every town. Every group of friends, you have certain towns, you have certain gifts. What it looks like for you is going to look different than another group of friends in a different town. And so here, a lot of the guys, I mean, they were academics, and so they're thinking, how do we do that here? And so our president, Jacob Imam, had this idea. He's very much an academic, but he saw that there was this, academics who kind of went through this system, got, learned philosophy or whatever, classics, but just didn't really have a way to provide for their families. And this idea of marrying the head and the hands, that if you learn to work with your hands in a trade, it actually will improve your intellectual life, and the other way around, that these aren't necessarily divorced from each other. So that was the concept. And so I knew them through the think tank. The college wasn't around when I went to Hartwood. It was still an idea. but they knew they wanted to do it, so they reached out to me and offered me opportunities. So I've been around, a while here at the
Okay.
college.
So you've basically been there from the beginning in a way at the college. How long has the college been around total then?
We only
About
have our sophomore class right now, so we've had students for this is our second year with students.
okay. Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions to ask you too. How many students do you have right now enrolled? And being pretty new, I'd imagine that's pretty low to start.
Yeah, we right now we have 30 students per class, so there's about 60 students here right now. We have a lot more people than that are applying. I think the acceptance rate, I think it's around 50%. Um, so that's okay. Like, again, I don't know if that's 100% accurate. That's my, from the timber frame workshop, that's the information I have about the
Yeah.
acceptance rate. And I think there's a really particular kind of student they're looking for because the academics are very challenging. And so it's kind of a unique person that is interested in pushing themselves that hard intellectually, and also um, wants to work in a skilled trade. But I mean, our students are exceptional. They're really great. Um, I've been very impressed with them.
Okay. Yeah, that's something I want to get into in a little bit. First, when I start all these podcast episodes as well, I just have like a kickoff question. Um, so Drawbore being the name, so for me with the podcast, it's supposed to build connections, strong connections through conversation. As we know, as a timber framer, a drawbore. What I would like to ask though is, do you drawbore when you teach your class or when you're timber framing?
Hmm.
Uh, yes or no? Why not? Do you like drawbore? All that sort of stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah. For me, we do drawbore. Let's see. I can turn the camera around. You can see our shave horses over here. They're
Okay.
a little wonky. We need to make some new ones. But I do drawbore, and I like it because that's what I was taught. Right? That's tradition. You do what you're taught. So Jack taught us to drawbore. He's obviously, if you're a timber framer, you know how opinionated he is about it, and I just love it. Like, there's nothing better than a kind of like a curmudgeonly old expert to like cling to their teachings when you're learning something fresh. So I guess it is kind of a divisive thing, but uh, I mean, there's always the temptation on every project. You're like, okay, we have like 2 frames done and we still need the pins for them. And we don't have any. And am I going to go chop down a tree? Like, how many rounds am I going to get? And then you do, and it's not straight grain. And so, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be times where I'm not draw boring because just the schedule demands it. Um, so it's not like I'm against it, but we're draw boring and building these. Well, we know we're using hand tools and power tools, but I think because it's an educational setting, it affords us a bit of that luxury
Mhm.
to hand make all the pins.
And do you guys, there's a lot of methods to drawbore itself too. Are you
Hmm.
like, I think there's some that have like an offset center punch
Yeah,
kind
that's
of
what we
kind of
do.
system. Okay. So it's kind of
Yeah,
like a rod with an offset
yeah,
just
it's
to
just a dowel with a nail in it that we clipped off and sharpened, and I think it's 3/32 off center.
okay. That's one I can get into more. How much is
Yeah,
the drawbore? I know in Japan they use I think it seemed a little bit high. I forget what it was that they were using, but it seemed like
yeah,
a pretty significant drawbore. It was like, whoa, you might blow that tendon out.
yeah,
But I mean they've been doing it for a long time, so there's definitely a secret
sure.
to it there.
And I mean,
Um,
again, like, I'm just doing 3/32, I think, because that's what Jordan Finch told me to do. He's like, uh, what, an eighth is too much, a 16th is too little, do three. And it's like, I don't have enough experience in this where, like, I'm just going off tradition. It's like, this guy who's better than me advised me to do this, so I'm going to do it.
that's good. And I think like engineering wise, I like to ask that too. So getting both sides of the coin, do you do that as a builder? Where do you do that? Is it coming from like, what you've been taught, just kind of handed down? But I get, both sides of that, like from the engineer, from the builder. Engineering wise, it's kind of like, yeah, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Building wise, it's like, yeah, I know everything's gonna be tight when it goes up, you know.
Yeah.
So,
And I think, too, it's like, this gets into the whole question of, this traditional mindset versus modern mindset, which, like, we're constantly here trying to figure out how to do the best work we can. and because a part of the traditional work is like they had a whole system set up to support the traditional work. So I think to work now and say I'm going to do everything traditionally, it's like, okay, well, do you have 12 kids and are like 6 of them like boys that you're training from the age of 6? It's like, part of how that worked was this completely different lifestyle. Um, but on the other side, I think on the modern end, there's the temptation, like the Enlightenment way, to abstract everything, and theoretically, this will work. This, we've calculated this load and this, and like we know it'll work. And it's like, well, but show me the 800-year-old building that did that in a standing, because there's always the thing you don't know, you don't know.
Hmm.
And so I think anytime you have a theoretical solution, like we should be suspect, even if I think there's levels of certitude, but I think it's healthy to, like, the one thing tradition has in its favor is at least the buildings that stood, we can look at them and see what they did. Right.
So, on that note with tradition, so you have timber framing as part of your curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
What other trades do you have, and what I would say there's kind of a multitude of questions here, but what
Sure.
separates you as a liberal arts school from other schools,
Sure.
and then trade schools, because you're kind of combining the two.
Yeah.
Um,
So they call it a trade college for that purpose. So, um, to answer this question well, I feel like I should have our dean or our president on the academic side. But they really are trying to do something, I think, really impressive on both ends. It's not just we want to do the trades well and you're going to learn a little bit of liberal arts. Like, they are trying to redeem not like even the finances of how this works. So the students will graduate with no debt. They're employed by the college to do trade work and on the job training. And that's a big part of the school, is that these guys are going to graduate without debt. Because a lot of them want to marry young, they want to have families, they want to have businesses, and there's nothing worse when you're trying to do that than to have this huge noose around your neck of all this debt. And So I think that's one big aspect, that they're going to come in and that we have a system that, as long as they do the work that they're assigned over the summer and during the school year, they won't have any debt when they come out. On the academic side, it's so our president, Jacob Imam, he's he did his master's in doctoral work at Oxford and like loved it, and like really loved the form of the education. So it was a lot of oral presentations. So like our students, when they write papers, they have to present them orally to their professor, things like that. So, I mean, I can't speak to that as well as him, but I just know it's a very challenging and impressive academic curriculum. My son's going to be here. He'll be a freshman next year. And I'm stoked, even for the academic side. And then on the
mhm.
trade side, the first year the students all do what we call anatomy of the home. So like, some of these students are coming in and they've actually worked in construction for a couple of years. They're coming in 21, 22. Some of them are fresh out of high school. And there's also, some of them have done very little building, like barely held a tool. So, some of the students have more experience in the trades, maybe less on the intellectual side. Some are like really excellent intellectually and just have almost no trades experience. And then you have some of these guys that have both, that are kind of like these superstars. So that first year is introducing them to like hand tools, power tools. They build a tiny home. They do the electrical, they do the plumbing, they do the roofing. It's just like an understanding of what is in a home, what are all the systems. And so for some of the guys that have had experience, that part might be a little elementary for them. But for some of the students, this is like a crash course in construction. And then their sophomore, junior, senior years, they choose a trade, and they are with a master in that trade and do all their on-the-job training in that trade. So the current offerings are plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and carpentry. And the timber framing has been a subset of the carpentry, a small subset of the carpentry track. They're not mostly timber framing. Starting next year, we're offering a traditional building track, and the timber framing is going to be one of the main components of that. And the traditional building track, this is really contentious too. It's like part of why it took us 2 years is we really wanted to do this well. I think the promise that you're going to come in and be a craftsman and provide for your family and not be in debt. It is possible for people. There's people that do it. I'm sure you know people that do this. I do. It's extremely challenging. And the idea that you're going to graduate 30 students a year that can all do that, I felt like I couldn't, that was a promise. I didn't want to bring people in with a promise I couldn't deliver on. And so what we're doing with the traditional building track is, my goal is to form So I know back when I worked in software, there was this concept of T-shaped employees. So the top of the T is they know a little bit, they know how to do like a little bit of everything, and then the tall part of the T, the vertical post is, but they're an expert in one thing. It's like we're hiring them because they have enough facility that they can have interesting conversations with different parts of the company, but there's one thing that they're absolutely essential for. And
Mhm.
so what I'm trying to provide for the students is like a T-shaped builder. So they're going to be doing timber framing, fine carpentry, and masonry. And the idea here is that they're doing two quarters of timber framing, 2 quarters of fine carpentry, 2 quarters of masonry, and then they're doing drawing, drafting, um, and then they'll also be doing some like roofing quarter, like plaster and enclosure systems. Now they're not going to go out and be a plasterer, right? Um,
Mhm.
but the idea is that while they're being introduced to all these concepts, they'll find one that they really love, and then all of their on-the-job training, we're going to focus on that one thing, and then their summer work, we're going to focus on that thing, introducing them to people who, getting them good jobs, like kind of hand placing them with people we know that are, good employers and good workers that they can work under. Our students are really exceptional. So like, a lot of these guys, I mean, it's both people, it'll work out well for both. Right. And it is a track you need to be more motivated for, realizing like I have a goal. I'm going to work hard during my OJT. I'm going to put in the extra effort. I'm going to be reading extra books on this. I'm going to be, when some guest lecturer comes in and talks to us, I'm not just going to listen to the lecture. I'm going to follow up with an email thanking them and and then a part of the curriculum is also the business management and development. So, I know you worked with Thomas Doherty. You guys are friends.
Mhm.
And he's been helping us with the curriculum. And he has this line that he gave our freshmen last year, that the traditional builder and the small developer are tied at the hip. He has his examples of in Philadelphia, the inner block developments of Philadelphia from the 1800s. They're still wonderful places to live. And those were built just by tradesmen who built them as like wealth generation for their families. And so part of what we're encouraging the students is, in addition to this trade, you need to be thinking like a developer. What opportunities are there here in Steubenville? What projects can you take on and manage? What opportunities are there back home? You have this powerful skill, and how can you leverage that with some business know-how and with this network you've built to, like, everyone likes traditional building, like no one can afford it. So how are you going to cross that gap? you know
Yeah. That's man, that's a huge question, especially now. What we have going on currently, just like in the world and, financially.
hmm
Um, but yeah, building your community based on, what you know. And it's also we've hit an interesting spot with that too, because traditionally this was how you built,
hmm
and I guess it would be more affordable then because it's just the way that you did it in a way. But now it's the exception. It's the higher price point type of thing.
hmm
I mean, craftsman wise and, what we're using our faculties for in timber framing versus rough carpentry, I'd say there's a pretty big difference there. You're almost doing finished carpentry as a structural element.
Oh yeah, with all
But
the problems that involves, especially when you're with a crew that's being finished conventionally. You've
mhm,
done your finish work, and they're coming through, and like, stuff's getting banged against your finished timbers, and it's you're it's like not your world. Like, you've done this. You as the timber framer are entering a different world where often it doesn't fit, and it's not reasonable to expect the people in that world to change for your thing. um, there's a lot of challenges there.
yeah. And the in the traditional building track, are they also so they're getting the basic kind of rundown of what you say you said HVAC, electric, and
So
carpentry?
they're doing, that freshman year they'll get a little bit of everything. So and then their sophomore, junior, senior is when they can elect to be in the traditional building track, which will
Mhm.
be a relatively smaller group. We're keeping it small on purpose. I think one is, it is a bit of a test, so we want to do it excellently. And the fewer students there are, the more attention we can give them, the more opportunities each student will have.
Mhm.
Um, and then I think, in success, then, maybe it could grow and become a little bit larger.
So the country's kind of moving, like we have the traditional skill set, and then we have the rough carpentry, and it's kind of getting married in this mass timber world.
Mm,
So
okay.
is that something that you guys have thought about, and how do you bridge that gap between the traditional world and the conventional world in what you guys are teaching, or just let that become something that they learn about? as they grow into the field, because it is something that is
Yeah.
booming quite a bit.
So I mean that's something I don't have a lot of experience with. So this is a part of a part of running this program and running this track. It is unique. So, I mean, I'm not some master craftsman. I told you, I've been doing this for about 5 years. I'm a fast learner, but you can only learn so much in 5 years. And so a big part of it is me bringing people in like Thomas, like, Jordan, like these different people for them to meet. And I mean, I can teach them how to do a square rolled timber frame. We can do that. And I can teach them how to do scribing. Um, but yeah, I don't have experience with mass timber. So a part of that is bringing people in that they can meet and learn from their experience. I will say a lot of the stuff that our guys want to do seems to be on the residential and the small end. They want to build houses, they want to renovate houses, they might want to do some historic renovation. I haven't seen a lot of interest from them in doing like larger commercial work yet, but that could
Okay.
that could come. It really is up to the student, like what they're interested in.
Yeah, maybe that's just one. I'll plant that seed for you as
Yeah,
the school grows, and that industry is definitely booming as well. But
yeah,
it's like it's a whole different animal in a way too, because you're using engineered lumber.
hmm
Connections are quite a bit different. Most of it is commercial. You have some fire issues to deal with too, and around the connections and member sizing and that sort of stuff. But if
right,
you can raise a frame and you've been on site for a handful of raisings, most of the stuff that you're going to do on a mass timber job, I think would be similar to traditional, if not easier.
okay,
Besides, it's a larger scale project.
hmm
So I'd, I'd, I'd be, I'd be interested maybe to have a mass timber installer and
yeah,
fabricator to maybe have that conversation to see where it's similar and different. Um, but I mean, there's a handful of shops that, if they're not cut from the supplier, they're also cut, you get glue lams or CLT panels shipped and they're cut and it's, your layout is similar to what you're doing in a timber frame-esque world. So if
right,
you know that sort of stuff with timber and you can kind of shape things with a square rule, center rule mindset, you kind of have built those traditional tools. I think that would also help you in that environment.
yeah,
But that would be, now that I'm thinking about it, kind of a cool link just to maybe just kind of plant that one for future.
yeah.
But
So when you made, because you worked in a timber frame shop in Philadelphia,
yeah,
right?
in and
Or
around
in
Philly.
Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania area. How many years ago was that?
Gosh, that was probably 10, 11 now
Okay.
that I was doing that. Yeah, and I've been on
Now,
my own. Yeah.
and now you're on the engineering side.
hmm
So what kind of insights do you have jumping from the guy in the shop to now calculating and seeing lots of projects?
Knowing how to like what's going on in the shop, and it
hmm
changes depending on what shop you're in. Because I've been in a number of different shops, from CNC shop to hand cut shop. Some are center
hmm
line, some are square roll.
hmm
Um, so as the engineer and designer, you do have some background. Like if you understand who is going to be building the design, you can
hmm
kind of figure out how to detail some things a little bit differently.
hmm
If they like to have, concealed steel, you might add that in your connection. If they
hmm
prefer to have more traditional connections in most of their stuff, then you start talking about, let's change some span, change species, that sort of stuff. So it
hmm
definitely does help in that aspect. And there's a
hmm
lot of insights there, regarding that. But I think raising too is also big. If you don't really know how to raise a timber frame, you might
hmm
spec a connection that you can't ever build.
Totally.
Um, so
Yep.
that's kind of a crash course. That's a crash
Yeah.
course for new timber frame engineers. It might just be,
hmm
a lot of times, it could be, some toe screws or toenails or that sort of thing, or not looking at it in 3D. In a 2D environment, you have tenons that will never get pegged because they
There's
are
no way to peg
all
it.
intersect. Yeah, then you forget
Yeah.
about, oh, a spline. I could do a high and low spline, but that's
Yeah.
something that you need to really understand.
hmm
Should I do a spline, or can we get away with a tension rod?
hmm
I've gone both ways with that, depending on, again, who you're working with. So I think being in different shops in that environment has helped to
Yeah.
provide different avenues to, solve problems in
hmm
that way as an engineer. So I think in that aspect, it's been pretty helpful. But I definitely do miss it sometimes,
Yeah, I was
because
gonna
I'm
say,
not I'm not on the job site.
do you get the itch to go
So
back?
Yeah, and in today's world, as an engineer after COVID, it made that a little bit easier because you can do more work around the country. And
Yeah.
so, like, what I have a benefit with is I can do more work and service more people around the country with
Mhm.
in the craft and with my specialty of knowing kind of how things are built. And then as an engineer, the the downside to that is if you're on a beautiful job site and you've got a great view, I do not have that view.
Yeah.
So there are some things about, like tying this to like Saint Joseph and just like some of the stuff that he might have been working on could have been, I think there was a story like maybe was it Jesus met Thomas building a latrine or something like that.
I haven't heard
Uh,
that.
but like you think about it, he's probably not working on the best jobs all the time. But
Sure.
on occasion, you're in a pretty mountainous scene and it's surreal
Yeah.
that that is your office. I just have a virtual background for my
Yeah. Yeah.
meetings. So, um,
Yeah, that I mean, and that also is like, I mean, that's the fatherhood aspect, right? And I think that's one thing that was appealing about the hand tools and the traditional tools is if even now, if I have to be here on a Saturday, and well, I mean, my eldest son's in here and he's cutting with me, but I have an 8-year-old son and a 6-year-old son and a 2-year-old son. I mean, the 2-year-old I can't really have in here, mom has to hold him. But I've had my 6-year-old and 8-year-old in here while if it's a day where I'm only using hand tools, and I'll set them up with a little station where they can like use the hand tools and get used to holding a Stanley number 4 or whatever, and I can hear them and they can hear me. No one's going to get a finger chopped off. um,
mhm,
and so there's something really, and I think also with the students here, I mean, we're using power tools a lot when we have the college students because we got to get work done, but there are those times where you don't have to, and you don't want to be too chatty, but they're learning really cool things over in the classroom and like discussing the philosophy, or there's some really cool conversations. And there's something about, God gave us all these senses. And when you're covering your ears and then you're covering your eyes and you're covering your mouth and your nose, and then you're doing work, there is a sense where you feel less human.
mhm,
Like you're deadening your senses for your own safety. Um, and it's like, you don't want to get too romantic or idealistic, but it's kind of undeniable when you can hear and see and smell. It's like, I mean, like I'm still working in the shop. Like, right, the dream is the Heartwood thing. Like you're outside under a tent and like some bird, starts calling, and then Jack's like, you know what bird that is? And he can name them all because he's been working outside. And you're like, well, I mean, you don't want to, you don't want to like it make it too romantic, but that's like, does it get any better than that,
yeah, I mean it's I think in the trades and especially in timber when you have some of these job sites, I mean some are great, some are, I've been on job sites on the coldest day of the year and the hottest day in the year back east, and it's unpleasant both times because you're humid and cold and you're it's a biting cold, or you're just sweating profusely and
Yeah.
you can't even grip half of your tools.
Yep.
And where if you do have things covered up, you're just sweating and dripping all this stuff into your eyes and your nose and
Yep.
whatever.
Yeah.
But it does make me think, like how do you tie that sort of aspect from what they're learning in school, especially like the Catholic root of that in what
Hmm.
they're doing? And I'm also going through the catechism right now too, kind of just going over the artwork and bringing God into what you're doing in the arts and all that. Is that something that you guys bridge the gap
Yeah.
on?
Yeah.
Like starting each class or course, from regular coursework, academia to the trades that they're learning?
Yeah, they are intertwined. So they're not like these two separate things that have no connection to one another. Um, the timber frame class we do in the summer, the past summer or two in the classes I've been doing, I start out the day with like an hour lecture, and a lot of it is about how did we get to where we are now? How did we used to build? We don't build that way now. What are the philosophical reasons why we don't? And so we get into that. But before that, and continuing this summer, our president, Dr. Imam, he gave a theology of work. So their lecture in the morning was on the theology of work, and then they got to timber frame. So this summer we're going to combine the two. And I mean, I got to sit in on that. I learned so much. It was great. And I remember, there's these like excellent nuggets. Um, well, what first of all is that work is a gift, right? Work is not toil. So the pay, he goes through like the Greek, and he goes through I'm blanking, another group of pagans, like their different views on work, but work was a problem for them, right? It was there was like an unfortunate reality to be avoided at all costs, right? Like work is for slaves. Um, and that completely changes for the Christian. Like, no, work is a gift. Work is the gift given to Adam. Like we would be working even if there was no sin. We get to participate in God God worked and we get to work. He's given us these raw materials. You destroy the form of the tree and that tree becomes a house. And that house is for a higher purpose than what the tree was. And that house is given back to God. Right. So we receive from God, we do our work and we give a gift back to God. And that cycle is the process of what we're doing. So it's a wonderful, beautiful thing to be able to do. It has an enormous amount of dignity and it has to be done well and like with fear and trembling. Like this is really important what we're doing. Even the smallest detail that no one will ever see, right? Makes you think of like the cathedrals with like some incredible piece of art that you can't even see because like no one can even get up there to see it. But it matters that it's beautiful. And so, I mean, that can even just be, I don't know, like some reduction you're doing and like really trying to just make it look nice. Like don't be sloppy. Um, that's a core part of I know. I mean, that's kind of an elementary thing, but that's that perspective is a core part of the perspective of the students here. And another one that always stuck with me, I loved this. So, and I think this is from Aquinas. But why do we have the bodies we have? If you look at animals, like there's animals with claws, they can dig better than us, or they're stronger than us, or they can bite things, or they can hear better, they can see better. Why are humans the way we are? If we're the ones that named the animals and rule over the animals, why do they seem to have things that are better than what we have? And the answer in the class, what we discussed was man is oriented towards the contemplation and worship of God. And we are like perfectly made for contemplating and worshiping God. And all of the physical way we're made is to enhance that. So a part of why our hands aren't rough is because they're incredibly sensitive. You can feel a texture that is incredibly small. And so your ability to perceive the world enables you to pray better. Like that's the physical stuff that you take when you go to contemplate God and to pray. You bring your experience. So like we're highly sensitive in the sense of sensing the world so that we could go pray well. Um, uh, yeah. So, I mean, these are some of the things that he taught in the class that that kind of blew me away. I really enjoyed being in it.
Yeah, I've just been digging into this a little bit deeper too personally, and just yeah, I like how you put that where you could sense that in all the small things that happened in your life. Because whether you're cooking or um, brushing your teeth, taking a shower, putting clothes on, waking up in the morning, every little thing that you're doing, you can offer up to God in that way, and um, to make that also a focus on what you're doing in your class and your tying from what they're learning to like we're not just building, but this is you're cultivating this skill and this craft, and it's really as an offering. It's really that's what it is,
Absolutely.
and you're chosen for that sort of thing. Do you ever talk with them about that? Like maybe they're
Yeah.
chosen even though they chose this too, like that
Yeah.
nuance there.
And I think part of that, what that makes me think of is, I think you can, if you do try to take this, if you have too romantic of a view with this kind of work, you can get really, really depressed because you can look at all these old buildings and say, I'm never going to be able to do something like that. Like, I don't have the mentors. I don't have the teachers. Like, there was a rupture. People stopped passing this information down. Like, maybe no one knows how to do that anymore. So, like, why even bother? Like, why even do this kind of work? Why not just, like, go, I don't know, build AI systems or something? Um, and as I've thought about that, I thought, well, it is an interesting time in which we live where I think if you lived in the early 1900s or in the Renaissance, especially the Renaissance, you could be fooled in thinking that like man was God. You could like look around at your like El Duomo and all these things and be like, I am a God. Look what we can do. Like we are so smart. We are so capable. We can make the most beautiful, incredible things. And I think like now, I think you'd have to be pretty blinded to have that sense right now. If anything, right now, it's like everything's falling apart. We can't even maintain our beautiful buildings. The bridges are collapsing. Um, and so there's, in a sense, it feels like this generation is a generation of stewards. So we, okay, maybe you don't have the best mentor, but like, what books do you have access to? What people do you have access to? Who can teach you something that you can't do? Um, and do that as best as you can. And maybe the fruit you like, you're not going to see the great cathedral in your lifetime, but the much greater work is your students or your children. Like their worth is so much greater than that cathedral. Like form them well. This work, a part of this work is to form the person. And like the cathedral is like the bonus you get, but the real thing you want is the saint. So in a
Hmm.
good sense, it's like it helps you not get too wrapped up in the material part of it, because there's just no way we're going to achieve what they achieved 500 years ago. But we can, like, it is possible that you will be holier than them. It is possible that you'll be a better father than them. You probably won't be a better craftsman. And I think having that perspective, like, that doesn't get you off the hook. That doesn't mean like you don't get to do good work. No, you have to do the best work you possibly can do while just kind of being humble about it.
Yeah, I really like that perspective, and I think in a lot of ways that's kind of why, I started this podcast. It's the fruit of it isn't necessarily that I'm building a lot of great buildings, but I'm hoping to bring the interest to, you know, for other people that are interested, that they can come and, learn about this through this podcast and then go to you directly. And like, if they want to get, steeped in their faith a bit more and learn the trade, this is definitely a great spot for them to go.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm hoping that the podcast, the fruit of that is also, growing these communities or these people or other builders that are out in the world doing their thing. One thing that I also learned, like just by having the podcast, is um, I talked with a French carpenter recently that worked on the Notre Dame roof after the fire,
Mhm.
and that's one of those things where you don't have a mentor because that was built over 800 years ago. So they just kind of got lucky with, some of the stuff that they had already looked at and drawn or redrawn.
Mhm.
And as far as mentors go, a lot of that stuff did not come down directly to him.
Mhm.
And the world that he was learning the craft from. So some of that stuff they kind of had to relearn the best that they could. And
Wow.
I think what's amazing, at least in the States, from what I've gathered with timber framing, is we don't have this strict sort of like othering of in the craft. We have this love for this traditional craft, and we learn like as a melting pot with the craft, from the Europeans, from the German, from Japan. But yeah, we can learn from all these places and then grow like all of our knowledge, kind of this,
Yeah.
well, maybe we can use that trick from the Japanese here, and then maybe we can use this trick from the Germans or the French here. Maybe we do the scribe technique here because the other stuff doesn't quite work because we have this curved member.
Yeah.
Like all that stuff kind of is culminating in what we're developing to in the States. And I think that's really cool
Yeah.
that we're
I
moving
agree. I
forward.
think that's the super exciting part of being maybe an American timber framing is that, I mean, we have a tradition in America that's interesting. Um, like I hesitate to say anything because these builders were so much better than me, better than I'll ever be, right? Um, but you can't help look at what was done in Europe or what was done in Japan and say like that's on a different level than what was ever done in America. And so maybe that gives us permission to say like I'm not just going to stick to my own country's tradition, but I'm going to look everywhere for the best work I can and learn everything I can. And I'm sure this has been your experience too. Is like timber framers are just so friendly and so generous with their time, so generous with teaching each other. So it's an incredible group to be a part of, where the knowledge is shared so readily, and everyone's just excited that the other people want to know it. Um, uh, so yeah, it's a good time to be an American and be interested in timber framing.
Hmm. And this is kind of where, like I kind of asked that mass timber question too, because it kind of
Mhm.
bridges the gap on, when say a couple hundred years from now, what we consider traditional, I mean, was traditional. It's been around for, so many hundreds of years, maybe 1,000 years, and the tradition is kept alive, as we're repairing buildings,
Mhm.
and that's part of, the other aspect of moving forward with tradition to make it last another couple hundred years, to keep it traditional. Does it maintain its current face now, or is it that we're also teaching how to repair these buildings after we've built them and
Yeah.
carrying that on down the line too? That's another big thing that I've been thinking about, as even just as an engineer, and understanding how, the Japanese buildings have lasted for so long
Mhm.
really is in their repairing cycle. And it's a
Right.
traditional thing. It's not just, we need to repair that. It's more built into their whole system and the psyche of
Right.
their community. That's one aspect that I wonder if that will take on a bit more with our culture, not just letting things get
Yeah.
run down to the point where we have to like really take care of it or replace it, or we need a traditional person that knows how to build this.
Yeah. I mean, to build traditionally is to maintain, right? Like it just everything has to be maintained. Mortar has to be repointed. Uh, that like that. The lie of like the uh, no maintenance just means you have to replace it when it breaks, right? No maintenance isn't
Mm-hmm.
isn't this lasts forever, and I think that's kind of the lie of like the plastic age, right? Is this no maintenance thing? But I've seen the switch even since in my lifetime. No one was pushing the trades when I was, I graduated from high school in 2002. No one was pushing the trades. It wasn't seen as a respectable thing to do. No one outright said it, but people just kind of knew that was the mindset. A lot of trades programs shut down around that time. And it's totally different now. I went to Dallastown High School in Southern Pennsylvania, and I ran into some students. And I was on the wrestling team, and they had wrestling jerseys, like the wrestling stuff on. I ran into them at like Hershey Park, like no, 2 years ago. And I was like, oh, I was on the wrestling team. We're talking about they still have, like the same coach. And I was like, what college are you guys going to? Because everyone on the wrestling team, when I was there, like all, I went to Penn State stuff. And they were like, oh, we're going to the trades. We're going to the trades. Like, of course we're going to the trades. And I was like, I mean, I've heard that over and over. And it's not, oh, I'm going to the trades because, oh, college isn't quite for me. It's like, no, I could go to college. I don't want to go to college. I want to go into the trades. And I think people want that power of, I'm doing something with my own hands. Like I'm not necessarily beholden, to an employer that's looking at grades to see if they want to hire me. They can look at my work and see what I can do. And even people, I mean, there's the homesteading movement has taken off. A lot of the people that take our timber frame class are, like adult men with families who just want to build a barn for their family, or like they have a dream of like building a home or like adding on to their home. Um, and it's like, well, if you want to build a barn, then like, like a 3-week timber framing class, like you actually can learn. Like that's you can show up, you can get the skills, you can go home and you can build a barn. I'm seeing that mindset. I think people are embracing it because, and if you want to do that, you want to do it with your friends, and then that just means like your kids are going to repair it with you, right? Yeah. So
Mm-hmm. So is that course during the summer? That's a whole separate thing than your general coursework for the school, right?
yes, yeah. So the summer course is open to anyone. It's a 3-week course, 9 to 5. Um, uh, we used to go through the Will Beamer book and just build the 12 by 16. Then we started, worked with Jordan Finch and he designed a 20 by 16 we built a few times. We did an advanced class where we did a scribe frame that Jordan taught. It was awesome with like, the daisy wheel that we like snapped lined on the ground. And um, that was intense for everyone. We got it done in like 2.5 weeks. No one was sleeping. We don't do courses like that anymore. It was like way too intense. Uh, now everyone sleeps, and we just work 9 to 5, and we finish a normal square ruled frame in 3 weeks. And
Okay.
it's not the thing. Like I don't work on it. It's all the students. Like I don't pull out the chain mortar, sir. Like they do everything. Um, so, and it's cool. I've had like, you hesitate to say it because like I do think people should come to this college, but I've had people who've just taken the summer course and they've gotten jobs as timber framers. So
Okay.
like you do, I mean, in some sense, it's like, some shops just want good people. And if you're a hard worker and you've already taken a timber frame course, then great, you know. Um,
That's
but
that's
yeah,
that's also the really hard thing in the States too. Like we don't really have a master timber framing track in the
yeah,
country. You might have a master carpenter, which is really conventional. I mean,
yeah,
and if you can frame a complicated like hip roof system, you should be able to, you'll be a good timber framer. There's some differences there, but
Yeah.
in general, it's going to be pretty close to what you're already kind of working on there. The difference is now all these faces are going to be visible, and
Hmm.
you have some compound joinery that you need to cut, but you're kind of already
Hmm.
there. But yeah, as far as like from what I understand, the like a master timber frame track, we don't really have something like that, you know, trade school wise, Votech
Yeah.
wise. It's kind of more conventional. So it's nice that you're also
Yeah.
providing that alternative track for people to go down. Um,
Yeah.
I did a trip to Japan last year, and they asked, I think all of us pretty much that were in our group, who is your sensei? And we're like, we just pointed to each other because like this is
Yeah.
that's kind of how timber framing
What a
has
different,
worked here.
yeah. What a different mindset. They're probably thinking, you poor lost sheep.
Yeah, in a way, and this is why we're here in Japan,
Yeah.
because a lot of what
Yeah.
we learned is brought over from Japan, and we're just kind of making it work with what we have here. But
Yeah. Yeah. So I told you this when we talked beforehand, but I'm going to say it again on the podcast in case there's anyone listening that can help me out. Um, I, I, you talked about going to Japan, and I have Takashi Nagai, who survived the atomic bombing on Nagasaki, who's famous in Japan. He's written a lot of books that are famous there. Less famous here, but he's Catholic and he's a servant of God, which means he's on his way. The church is trying to determine if he's going to be canonized a saint. And after the bomb dropped, his wife died in the bombing, and he had cancer even before the bomb dropped, and it was he knew he wasn't going to live that long, and he had his friends build him this tiny little house, like I think it's smaller than 10 feet by 10 feet. And it's still, and that's where he wrote all these books. And he like raised two of his kids. He actually lived, I think like 5 years after the bomb dropped, something like that. Wrote a bunch of amazing books, and they have his house there still. And I want to meet a Japanese carpenter who can help us. I want to take the students there so they can see his house. And I want to build a replica here in Steubenville as a shrine to Takashi Nagai, but I need to meet a Japanese carpenter who wants to work with us. It just seems essential. It just seems like that sharing of that knowledge, especially with the history of what happened there, and especially because Takashi Nagai, all of his writings were about forgiveness and reconciliation and peace and submitting to God's will, and that was like even in the hardest of circumstances, right? He gets terminal cancer. All the people he knows, like seemingly almost all of them, are instantly incinerated. His like beloved city literally is like a living hell, and yet he didn't lose hope and had joy. So there's just so much to learn there, and the fact that it was that his friends built him this home. Yeah. So that's one of my dreams. If there's anyone out there that can help connect me with someone, I want to do that here.
yeah, I think let that be our prayer. I
Yeah.
think I think that'd be really cool. And also when I was in Japan, that's when I first learned about Takashi Nagai too, because
Mhm.
I was there during Lent, and um yeah, he came up in something that I was listening to too, and it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right where you need to be. So I think that would
Absolutely.
be a great an awesome project and a great kind of bridge to
Mhm.
communities and traditional techniques and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I think that'd be an awesome project and definitely keep me connected for that one.
Oh yeah.
As that one's, I'll spread out what I can too, and if you find something else, but I'm sure that's going to come to fruition. But just keep me connected for that. I'd
Yeah.
love to be a part of that one.
You've now been brought into the orbit of the college. So
Right. Yeah. Um, but yeah, though I also wanted to ask too, so just project wise, so you have the coursework during the summer, and then you have your what's gonna be this Takashi Nagai house at some point is gonna happen. What other projects are they working on like in school? Because you said that the
sure.
school also hires them too. So are they working
Yeah.
on those projects as part of the coursework, or is it something different that you guys are doing during the course?
So the freshmen, it's a part of the coursework. They don't get hired until their sophomore year. So the college has a construction company, and so that construction company hires the students. And a part of this is because it's a part of this Ohio program where our students are from all over the country, so they can go back to their state that they're from, and the hours will count towards their like journeyman status in whatever state they're in. So there's a whole like complicated bureaucratic system that we've had to navigate to ensure that for our students. Now for carpentry, it's not as big of a deal because most states don't regulate it in the same way. You just have to get like your GC license or something. But it's really important for the plumbers and the HVAC guys and the electricians. Like this year we did a new house build. Actually, Thomas Doherty was the designer on it, and so the sophomores are doing everything on the house. So it was a hybrid timber frame stick frame. We timber framed the kitchen, dining room, and great room, and then the rest was stick framed. And then the students went in, they plumbed it, they ran all the wires. So that's what they're doing on their on the job training. Then they're doing like another there's like an old bank building here in West Virginia. It's like on the register of historic places that they're renovating. That's going to be offices for the city. So lots of different projects. I'm hoping with the and then we just have timber frame projects coming through. So right now my assistants are two teenagers, my son and his best friend, who they've been timber framing for me, I don't know, 2 years now. And they get to do it like they're homeschooled, so they just get to do it like that's what they do in the afternoons is they like timber frame for 4 hours a day. But I'm losing them. They're both going to become freshmen. So I'm not going to have my workers anymore. But that's why next year with the traditional track, the OJT, there's what it is like the students that are really, I have a few students that, well, we haven't decided on who's going to be in the track, but I know there's a few students that really want a timber frame. So it's like, okay, then I'm just going to keep the jobs coming through and I'm going to give you a chance to be like project manager. So, okay, this customer wants a pavilion. I'm going to show you how I order the timbers. I'm going to show you how we prep. They already are good at doing the joinery, but I'm going to give you the experience of like running a project.
Mm-hmm.
And because that when they get out, it's like, yeah, you need to know the craft, but even more valuable is like, can you get a project from someone says, hey, I want a thing, to the project's done and the client's happy. So I'm trying to give them those experiences.
Yeah. And those are just as much key as what you're doing too. That's the relationship building aspect of the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
I do have a question too with because this is also a little nuance too with the HVAC, electric, and those other trades that you're also working in unison with for other projects, especially custom homes, which guys will get into.
Yeah.
Um, those HVAC and electrical guys are also going to be assets if they work with other
Mhm.
timber framers. There's some pretty drastic differences in how
Yeah.
those systems are run within a traditional timber frame. Um, you know, so yeah, they're a little different with how they're running traditional timber frame versus
Yeah.
conventional systems. So do you guys also branch off and kind of talk about that while you're on these projects of,
Yeah.
this is
Well,
very different in this plumbing system versus electric here? Yeah.
yeah, we've had to just out of necessity. I mean, this last build, it was kind of like, I'm the headache and all the other trade masters. Like, what are we going to do with that? What are we going to do with you? Like, they've never had to work with a timber frame. So I think that's one of the nice things here is that, they now have done one timber frame and they've got their solutions on the first one, or even like, the roofing guys, like that can be frustrating too if you've never done roofing on a timber frame and there's just things that are different, especially because we're doing kind of traditional timber frames. So like I wasn't paying attention to the same distances to make their sheet goods an easy thing for them. So
Mhm.
like I've been learning how to make things easier for them, and also like I'm printing out timber framing guild journal articles on like I think Brad Morris wrote like a 3-part article on like wrap and strap. And so I'm like printing these out and sending them to all the other like job site leads of, hey, here's the, because sometimes like I leave the job site and they just do whatever they're going to do. It's like, okay, next time, let's not do it that way. Let's try this
Mhm.
so everyone's learning how to work with each other well.
Yeah, and then like the other conversation too, because there's so many things you can do. I had conversation with Brungraber recently. He kind of discussed it a little more in detail of the disentanglement that you get when you separate, the structural components and all the other systems that are within the building.
Mhm.
So there's a whole concept, also of just infilling a timber frame versus all, you know,
Mhm.
keeping your exterior wall the exterior, but just running all your other stuff through it.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, or the infill. And there's also different challenges between the two. Just not necessarily easier, it just changes.
Yeah.
Um, the systems. Yeah, so do they learn a little bit about that too when they're building these? these
Yeah,
frames?
I mean, it's something I want to go into more with them. I mean, that's the big problem. Like, problem I say is, like when I was at Hartwood, I kept asking all these questions about insulation, and it was the one thing at the program that I felt like the answers weren't as thorough or even as opinionated as I would like. I think like everyone can be real opinionated on a drawbore. They can be opinionated on different things, but it's like, okay, well, what's the best way to enclose and finish a timber frame? And it's kind of like, well, this is what I do. It has some drawbacks, but I don't like what other people do. But I'm not even there was kind of like there's maybe I mean, I would love to hear your thoughts. It just seemed like there's definitely like the SIPs diehard guys, and then there's the people that are detracting from that. But then, if you're not going to go with SIPs, I mean, no one's doing the actual traditional infill. It seems like on a serious level. But and it's like, what angle do you want to pick? Like, okay, let's talk about like the health of the family that's in this home. And you say, well, it's going to be fine. So we have like these great air exchange systems. And then, I mean, Jack Sobin talked about this. It's like, yeah, what about when someone goes to sell their house and like those systems get turned off for 2 months? So it's we've done a few different things, and I feel like I'm still in that discovery phase of like, what is the best way to enclose a timber frame when the timber frame it is that like it's a piece of your furniture. Are you just going to hang your house like a coat over your timber frame? Like there's that's like that there's a lot of good things that can come from that. Like the timber frame will be very well protected, and 100 years
Mhm.
from now you can just rip that all off and put a different one on. I don't know. What are your thoughts on enclosure?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't really have a a great or probably the answer that you want, because I work in all different areas in the country.
Yeah.
And I do think there is immense benefit to the local tradition.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that should be looked at, you know, just regarded in just a higher level.
Sure.
Like a zip system here or a really tight system here might not work everywhere, and I don't know if we should run our systems the same everywhere in that regard.
Mhm.
So I do think some local knowledge is good to heed,
Mhm.
as when you're framing and talking to other local builders on how they do things. And I, it's kind of a broad roundabout answer to getting nowhere for you. But um, as like buildability wise, I do love a zip or a SIP system,
Yeah.
just with disentangling the structure and having an envelope that is like, I do like that. There are some challenges with, foundation, shear wall, all the other stuff. How do you make all those connections work all the way through?
Mhm.
That you do have to think about a little bit harder. Infill now, I love it as a traditional method. Um, but then we're trying to get all our modern stuff through there. And now
Yeah.
you're cutting holes where we don't want holes. And to run your wiring and your plumbing, it kind of forces things in places that you might not want them to be. Then you have
Yeah.
other issues like air leakage and water leak and that sort of stuff. And then how does the repair system look? And
Mhm.
getting back to that conversation on you know repair and maintenance and all that sort of stuff that you need to do. How do you make that easier? In a lot of ways, I think we're making our jobs harder because, to repair some of these systems, you do have to kind of undo it and redo it. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, unfortunately, it's not. I don't have the best answer for that. I do like separating the systems as much as you can, just
Mhm.
for if I need to bust into a wall, I'm not really doing much with the structure, and you can separate the two. But I also love seeing the structure in a timber frame.
Yeah.
That's where like the hybrid system is kind of funky too, because you're kind of doing both. You're
I know.
supporting the
I know.
hybrid timber frame aspect with, the entangled structure. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So sorry, I don't really have a the best
Yeah.
answer for you.
That
It's like,
shows you what a problem is because this is what everyone says, right? Like there that
yeah,
and I think part of it is it's not a so like we think in like product solution mindset, like which not even saying a product you buy, even if it's a traditional, even if you're like, I'm gonna do like wattle and daub, but like my product is like there's a thing I'm gonna do to this timber frame, and there needs to be a thing that's the best one. But I don't it's not necessarily the thing that's the problem, it's the system of building that's the problem, which I think we talked a bit about this. Christopher Alexander got into that in his book, The Production of Houses. He said, here's like 7 systemic problems with how we build houses. Here's my 7 solutions. And, his very first problem that he brings up, and I think it was like the 70s or the 80s when he wrote this, the first problem was the architect and the builder are different people, and then we have the engineer too. We didn't even mention the engineer, right? But it's like, and the architect likely will never be on site. He doesn't know the people that are going to live there. He doesn't, I remember Jack Sobin in our class, he talked about this. He was saying, growing up, they'd always have the building plans in the newspaper and he would look at them, but they never said where the sun was. He's like, well, this can't be a good house if I don't know where the sun is. That's like maybe the most important consideration.
Yeah.
And so, Christopher Alexander says we need an architect builder. It's kind of a joke, right? Because we know that architect means like master builder. We need a master builder. But he said we need the same person. Whoever designs the house has to build the house. And he went further. He said they need to know the family. He needs to be able to make changes on the fly as the building's going up, because he's going to notice like there's a great view over there. And then he's going to change where the window is because he knows the wife is going to be here when she's like cooking, and she's going to be able to see the kids playing in the backyard. And you're not going to realize that until you're on site. And, you need to measure the height of the client's elbow to the floor. And that's where you're going to set the counter height. And, so it's this like, again, you get to this level where it's like, it seems so romantic, but he did build a bunch of homes this way. They weren't all in America. He would go to South America and he would have friends build together. And so part of that is like, in our current system, you can only hope for so much. And you can say, I'm going to rebuild the system, but that's probably going to be on a local level with your family and community. You're probably not going to have too much of an impact past that. But it is also a real, everyone knows with timber framing, it's nice to have friends to help you do a raising. Like there is an opportunity there. But it so quickly comes down into this is just unrealistic. Just like buy your SIPs and put them up. Like, what are you complaining about?
Well, I think for one, I think this is the reason why I can't give you a straight answer for that. And two, a value that people don't normally see when they want a timber frame. Because really, to sell a timber frame, you do kind of need to design the whole house because it's functioning with you in your space, which is a dance that you don't normally have in a home. Um, so that value in designing, and this is something you could maybe bring up in your classes too. If you haven't, it's not just selling the thing that people want. You do actually need to get to know them. And unfortunately, like most timber framers want to build a timber frame, you do also kind of need that interior design aspect in what you know, because you also need like how does your movement through the building express not only the frame but just that person's life, because you're ultimately looking for a higher quality of life, and that's why you're building this with this traditional method. With that, like even with the exterior envelope, like we were discussing earlier, you do kind of need to know the people, which is why I can't really give you a good answer. Like we are kind of handicapped now with some of the building codes of what we require, but I could take the same floor plan and just flip it 180 with the sun, and it's going to react a completely different way.
Yep.
Just by the openings that we have, front of the house versus back of the house. You'll have, if you're in a snowy environment, the shady side's always going to be a little bit icy, that sort of stuff. Just even where you place your house on your land, that sort of stuff. Usually that's something that if a timber framer is like designing your whole home, I think them bridging with an architect, they can kind of help solve some of these issues. But I do think you hit the nail on the head, so to speak, or the timber with the beetle, however you want to say it. By having, we're so separated in our design capacities now with kind of the requirements that we have just from the building code aspect, architect, engineer, designer, builder, your 4 or 5 different people plus other trades. Yeah, it's a headache just trying to get to know them before you even really know who you're building for. And ultimately, yeah, with a well-crafted space, you should really know who's going to be using it, because you know, we're just so used to our consumer one size fits all for everybody.
Yeah.
So that's a big topic. And how do you bridge that in your coursework and classes? Is that something that you guys discuss, or it's just like you guys will find out one day?
Yeah, no, we definitely think about that, especially because because we're interested in mass masonry as well. So it's why it's been so helpful having Thomas work with us, because he timber framed with you, then he did mass masonry stuff with like Clay Chapman, and his younger brother did as well. Then he went and did the architecture thing at Notre Dame. Um, so I've been able to meet some interesting people also doing mass masonry through Thomas, and they're doing new builds, and so this one guy, Austin Tunnel, he was saying the biggest complaint he gets is, well, why don't you make affordable housing? And he's like making these like beautiful mass masonry like homes, and like even commercial things, structurally brick with even like timber framed elements, porches and things like that. And he just goes, I mean, there is no such thing as new affordable. Like even a conventional home that's new isn't affordable for most people. But I'm making a home that's going to be affordable 100 years from now, and it's still going to be standing, and people are still going to want to live in it. And so in some sense, I mean, you got to find your place kind of like in the world, in the construction world. Like, what are you going to offer? But I do think it's a good time to be highly opinionated. And it's a good time to say, like, hey, I'm not going to be building the home necessarily that everyone can afford. I'm not going to be building the home that everyone's going to want. But I have very good reasons for building the way I'm building. And it's a very good building. And then finding people. I mean, because of the internet, it's the best time to be opinionated and find people that have the same strong opinions as you. You don't want to be a jerk, but I think it's okay to just say, like, I don't have to. Not everyone has to understand this or see it as good. If I think it's good, and I can get some people who have the capacity and the power to make it happen, whether that's financial or otherwise, um, then I think you got a better shot at it now than you did like 20 years ago, making that work.
Yeah. And again, this is also kind of why I started this podcast too. Um, like I love what I do engineering wise, but I also just want to get to know people and who they are in our field. Selfishly, I just want to get to know people, but also, with having it public, I hope that, if people are looking for an employer or to go to school, they find that opportunity like with this conversation. Or folks
Yeah.
that are looking to build some sort of timber frame for a house or whatever, they find a company and they get to know that person,
Yeah.
in that way. And I think websites are changing in that way too. If
Hmm.
if you could see somebody on a podcast, you're probably going to go with them over
Yeah.
the website than what you see on the website. You can just listen to them and get to know them in that way before you even talk to them. Um,
Yeah. One of the other things I can recommend too, like if people, like a lot of, everyone who does the summer classes, you sell those frames, and it's best to sell them locally because no one wants to ship their frame too far. Um, at least like we don't. I don't want to have to drive a frame very far.
mhm.
But we also now have students that have graduated from the summer class. I have one student, he's working for Stable Hollow Construction out in Southeast Pennsylvania, timber framing. I have another student that's out. Where is he now? He's out in the Midwest, farther west from here. But like so like if people are looking for someone locally that they can kind of trust, or at least can like walk them through something, like sometimes you don't need to hire a timber framer, you just need to talk to a timber framer to like readjust all your expectations and bring you back to reality. um yeah, I'm more than happy to connect people with kind of our alumni. We don't have alumni for the college yet, but we do have alumni for the summer course. you
Okay.
know
Yeah. Well, yeah, being a couple of years in. So being new now, and I'm sure this will change later, but how do most people find you to get enrolled into your school?
so at first, so it was Matt Frad's podcast, that Pines with Aquinas. Jacob went on once and mentioned we had the course, and that filled up our summer courses for like 2 years. And it was wild. Like people were coming in from all over, Los Angeles and Canada. And I'm like, how did you find out? And it's like, oh, my aunt saw this podcast and told me I should come do this thing. Um, but now it's like, I actually built a website for, or like, put a web page up for the course this year, and just put like, hey, if you're interested, sign up. And I think we had like, I don't know, we had over 100 people, maybe 140, maybe two. We had a ton of people sign up, say they were interested. So now it's like, okay, we just email blast that. We don't really do any marketing other than like people find the college, they find out this is something we do, they can sign up, and then we send emails out to them letting them know we're doing the class. It's been we've filled up every class every year without really trying, and I think it's the Catholic angle, right? It's like they know there's a lot of places that can teach you how to timber frame and teach you how to timber frame well. There actually aren't a lot of places that'll do like the full intensive course. Like Heartwood will do it. And that's how I just modeled this class after what I did there because I loved it so much. And I think I saw uh, for from my perspective, 3 weeks was the minimum amount of time where you could walk away and be like, I know how to do this. Like I can order timbers and do this. And so there has been even internally people have been like, can't you do a 1 week course? Can't you do it? And I was like, I could, but it's going to be more of like introduction to timber frame, like timber frame fun. Like to be able to do it when you leave. Some people aren't used to it. It's like we are working 9 to 5 hard, like on your feet. Um, you know, some students have come in and like we've had a few where it's like they just they don't have the physical or like mental toughness to like do this 9 to 5 for 3 weeks. Most people do. Um, and so, but
Yeah,
I just think that's like it's what's required,
yeah. The Japanese apprenticeships, I believe they were sharpening chisels for the first 5 years of their career.
Oh yeah.
Don't hold me to
Don't
it.
tell them.
don't
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 tell them I'm teaching people in 3 weeks.
don't hold me to that. But I mean, it's that's kind of our template for what we learn in the States though too. I mean,
Yeah.
with the traditional stuff like we mentioned before, like the master craft track with timber framing, for one, it didn't really exist. So how do you really make that and
Yeah.
standardize that throughout the country? But yeah, we have the benefit of learning from so many different people. But yeah, it's really just one of those like get the spark and make sure they can keep it lit. But if you
Yeah.
smother them, it's kind of
Yeah.
hard to keep that fire burning. So that's
Yeah.
kind of a benefit that we have with timber framing, but it's easier to get a little bit too far ahead of your skis than you were expecting sometimes. Um,
Yeah. I think that's probably the Japanese like their view of Americans, like the caricature, right, is like, I'm the best and I can do it and I should be president. And like, look at me, I'm loud and I'm the best. And like, I understand why when they're like, what do you think you can do this for 3 weeks? Like, but it's like in America, people do. It's like, I don't know, people took this class and they have jobs and they're learning more and they're learning on the job. So maybe the mentality is like, you're not going to leave here as an expert, but you're going to leave here with what you need to take that next step. And then it's on you to take that next step.
right. Yeah, and I wasn't saying that as like a comparison of better or worse type of thing. That's really easy. Was a comparison as a thief of joy, right? It
Yeah,
was just more of like, this is how we do things. It doesn't make it necessarily wrong or right. You might
sure.
lose some things in translation because you do have to take the initiative. And in some
Yeah.
ways, it's harder because you do have to take the initiative to keep finding more people to learn from. In the
Um,
Japanese world, you have your sensei that you're learning from. But yeah, so we just have to we have to take that initiative after that first 3 week crash course and keep finding more mentors. In a way,
absolutely.
it connects you to the world a lot
Absolutely.
better than what you might have in Japan. So it's not necessarily better or worse. It's just,
Yeah.
it's different. This is how we do it. And,
Yeah.
um, yeah,
I mean, it brings it back to St. Joseph in this lack of fatherhood. It's like St. Joseph being the carpenter saint, being the, foster father of our Lord. And it's like just everyone feels it, I think, even if you can't verbalize it, right? Like there's something that is owed to us that was lost. And not even like owed, like, how dare you, but it's like the West, like there's so many things that were so great about the West that for whatever reason there was a rupture and it wasn't handed down. And I think we feel that pain as a lack of fatherhood, and not even our particular fathers, but like the like patriotism, like pater. uh I think it can be hard for people in America to feel patriotic, right? There's this weird rupture with why can't we build, like, why are these ones, like, once you're convinced that old buildings are beautiful and you're like, well, why didn't anyone teach us how to do it? Why aren't we doing it that way? Like, why does so I was in Pittsburgh this week, and I spent an evening there and just looking at these beautiful churches and some old beautiful buildings. Like Pittsburgh's an old enough city that these buildings were built, they're beautiful and they're durable and they're still standing. And like we went in a coffee shop, and this coffee shop was like so hip and so cool, but the only reason it was so cool was because it was in this old building. Like they didn't do any of this. this was a gift to them from someone 150 years ago, and they inherited it. And like that connection, like that is a connection with your father, and a connection of fatherhood is like someone did this so well, and I'm being taken care of now because they did their job so well. And so when you experience a lack of that, it can be really frustrating. And so I think, part of what we're doing is like reforging that chain. Like I don't want my kids and my grandkids and my great grandkids to say my grandfather didn't care about me. And like a part of how they know you cared about them is that, maybe they're using the barn you built, or they're in a home you built. Like that's that American story of like, oh, my grandfather built this house with his own hands. Like most people don't have that story, and I think we would all love to have that story.
Yeah. That I think honestly that's a great way to end this.
Yes.
Because we can keep going on, but yeah, I think that's the dream that we're all searching for, and I like that at your school and in your coursework, seek and you shall find, right? And that's what you're kind of providing, that gap or the bridge to that over that gap. Um, yeah, Adam, I appreciate this whole conversation and getting to know you. Further conversations in the future with the work that you guys are doing. And I certainly hope that this um, brings a lot more people or more people that are interested into your school. I hope this brings more people in
Yeah.
and more interest.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Brian, for having me on. This is really awesome. Cool getting to know you, and yeah, congrats on. Have we talked since you came into the church this Easter? Congratulations.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we talked right before that. So yeah, I'm
Right
fully
before.
fully in.
Yeah.
My hair did
Awesome.
not catch on fire.
Nice.
uh,
So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to be. I mean, like I said, you're in the orbit of the college. I'm going to be leaning on you now all the time. I'm sure you're going to get lots of questions and lots of requests for help from me.
yeah, Adam, man, I appreciate this so much. I'm so looking forward to, like I said, I hope this brings more people and more awareness to what you guys are doing, and more interest into your school and builds your school up. I hope this is a good fruit for you guys. So, yeah, I greatly appreciate it, and thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you for watching another episode of the Drawbore podcast. We loved having you. If you're on YouTube or any other social media, you know what to do. But also, if you're looking for some more info and behind the scenes, consider joining us on Drawbore Podcast Patreon. We'd love your support.